Evet, sanırım düzeldi.
So we shall start our panel right now. In this panel, indeed, we will be talking about the programs and treatment programs regarding addiction as well as its efficacy. And I believe that we will have beautiful speeches. And the first speaker is Gökçen Aydın. She is faculty member in Kalyoncu University, and she will be presenting us a survey on addiction. As you know, that the addiction research program is a program being conducted by Green Crescent. So I would like to invite her to the rostrum, please. Hello to everyone, and thank you very much for the introduction. Today, I will be talking about the training program for combating against addiction, and I will be talking about one of the modules of this program. Perhaps more or less you have heard about this program, and it has been already discussed in this symposium as well. It is consisted of 5 modules, but however, I will be talking about one of the modules, which is about the drug addiction. And first of all, with Mr. Şener Öztürk and with our team colleagues, we have conducted this survey, and it has been carried out and executed within Turkey-wide as the pillar of combating against addiction. So we will try to I will try to exchange with you this program, this module actually. And as you know, one of the bases of forming a healthy society is that the individual should also be healthy. And we think that this prevention program, for combating against drug addiction is actually a prevention program as well. And it is really important that this is a prevention program, as we have seen in the previous slides. Presentations. It's really important to create awareness before the addiction has arisen. So within this context, actually this program combating against addiction is really underlined. And I will not describe what it is, what addiction is. We have been talking about this since 2 days though. And here actually in terms of at the point of education, these children, these students actually believing in themselves, and for that reason we start this program in primary school, because addiction is not related to any social role or class. We even see that there is addiction in the low-income families as well as high-income families. And we see that the conflicts, the lonelinesses, and excess spending, all these are taken into consideration, and accordingly this program has been developed, and they continue within this course. So why we are implementing this program? I will just call this program in short TBM. So why TBM? Just to increase social awareness, because it's really important that the youngsters should live away from addiction. We also target that the youngsters survive or lead a life free of addiction or without any addiction. And TBM program is consisted of tobacco, alcohol, and drug substances, sorry. And it is a preventive and protective program, as I mentioned before. So we know that the drug addiction starts already now in early times, even under the age of 15 years, and this corresponds to high school education. And we see that there is high harm caused by addiction to the students in terms of their social environment, physical condition. And the students say that if I just take it once, it would not make me addicted. So at the end, of course, they become addicted. So probably if you have your colleagues at the schools, they would certainly have such observations. So This is a program implemented for primary, secondary, and high school students. It is consisted of 5 modules like health, tobacco, technology, and alcohol and substance addiction. So the healthy lives, tobacco addiction, and technology addiction is valid for primary, secondary, and high school, and substance addiction is only handled. Alcohol addiction and substance addiction is valid for the ones for the high school students. So in this survey, we asked the question, the ones who receive the TBM program, and as well as the ones who do not receive this TBM program. What is the difference in terms of their mood, in the moods of the students before the program and after the program? And if there has been any change, does this change show any difference in terms of the gender or the age differences? And one of the most important dimension of the survey is the quality dimension, and this is we also ask the opinions of the parents and teachers about this program. So for that reason, I will be providing you information about this program in terms of the quality and quantity. And we have used the mixed method, because we first will examine the qualitative aspects, and then we examine the quantitative samples, and then we use in terms of the quantitative dimension, we use 2 times 3 mixed experimental pattern. And for the qualitative one, we have had the content analysis, and also we use a t-test, and also we use ANOVA method, ANOVA patterns. As you see on the graphics here, the table, for the experimental group, we gave a pre-test, and then our teachers applied TBM application, and the same group took the same test, and then afterwards monitoring test was given. And afterwards, these analyses are tested. I will just share with you the results. And this was a program that was applied within Turkey-wide, and we selected from each region one one city, and the pilot implementation was made in Istanbul, and then we went to other cities in coordination. We met with coordinators of Green Crescent, and then we explained about this program, and accordingly we provided an opportunity to have these tests applied. And in terms of quantity, we had 2,355 participants, and in the qualitative study, we had 24 high school students, and as well as parents and teachers. And the qualitative part was applied in Istanbul schools, and in other schools, in other cities, in schools, this qualitative part was applied. As I mentioned, for the high school students, all these 5 parts of the module were applied as measuring tools: healthy life, smoking, technology use, alcohol use, and substance use. And also with 5 questions, we measured the moods. So when the results were scored high, we can say that the students are in a good condition. And also in the qualitative study examination, we have used semi-structured forms to ask the questions to the parents and teachers, and we ask questions. Distinguished audience, sorry for not being able to keep up with the speaker as she reads out all the presentation. It's not possible for the translators to keep up with the speaker. We will try to do our best in this respect. Sorry for the inconvenience. We also provided some testing tools as well, measuring tools. And we have identified that in the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grades, in terms of the knowledge levels, the scores that they have been given in terms of measuring their level of knowledge, we did not identify any significant difference, but we have found out that TPM program has been effective. But when we look at the mood scores, the ones who received the TPM program and the ones who did not receive it, we couldn't find a significant difference. So in their moods, this does not affect their mood, but in terms of the gender and level of the class, we have seen that the gender before the test and before application and after application did not create any difference, did not provide any significant difference. So we can say that there is a better understanding of the knowledge, and also in terms of the quantity analysis findings. And here our focus point were the students, because the students were the ones who had the program. But however, this information that was acquired by the students created a kind of difference, and we tried to find out how this reflection of this accumulation of the knowledge. We tried to find out this issue, and we asked also the questions to the teachers as well as to the parents, and we included them into the qualitative part of the test. And then in the focus group meetings or focus interviews, we have seen that there was a really contributory and as well a participatory attendance to these interviews, and it was good to hear from the answers of the questions directly from the students. And I will be sharing with you the results of the qualitative interviews. And I also would like to give some examples. When we asked our students related to substance addiction, they said that the problem would be created if the students are curious to try the substance. So they mentioned that trying is an important factor for becoming addicted, but TBM programs certainly create an awareness for substance addiction. And we received similar results from the survey made in the primary and secondary schools. So the students were applied to certain ways in order to receive or in order to access certain substances. And so I just would like to mention what the interviews or what the opinions were the students said. When we asked the question, if you have a colleague or friend, would you have any colleague? So actually, we asked the question: if you have a friend who uses it, would you stop being friend with that person? He or she said that no, I would not do it, because if I stop being friend with that person, he would use it more. This was the reason. So. And the next group was with the parents focus group interviews, and actually we picked the students randomly, and we also invited the parents, and they participated at this focus group meetings, and they said that their children already are not using these substances. So there were also parents saying that drug or substance usage could create or could develop avoidance behaviors, and all of the parents mentioned that even though once this substance is used, this would certainly have a risk to make the children addicted. But still, they mentioned that none of the children are using the substances. And then we asked the parents of how the children would respond if they would have any friends who use substances, how they would respond. They said that their children would not be friends with these people, and we asked the question to the guide teacher. And this teacher is the best person who would observe the best these children. And the teacher told us that they listen to the children in the best way about their problems regarding these, that could be about the substances. And as regards, or according to the guide teacher, we asked how the children would react to this, and it was mentioned that the children would say no if they were ever proposed to take the substance or to use the substance. So the guide teacher said that one of our students died because of using drugs, and when he or she said that when this student died, they became more aware of this issue. They were afraid, and they wanted to learn more about substance use. And he said that they can easily become addicted to smoking. Alcohol, they take it when their family members are not at home. So substance use is very few or very less. And then we asked the same questions to the branch teachers. Actually, these teachers are still. So can you please wrap up? And these branch teachers said that these students actually disguise or hide their knowledge about this. And just similarly to the previous answers, they said that the children would respond to this question as even though it is used once, they would not become addicted, so they would prefer keeping away from it. But still, the students said that they find smoking and alcohol use more risky and more dangerous. And as I mentioned, the branch teachers, mentioned that they do not treat alcohol and smoking the same way. And also, we asked the same questions to the administrators because they don't have a possibility to observe the students compared to teachers and guide teacher. And the administrators mentioned that the children avoid using it or they prefer not using it. And this survey has shown us that the children are eager to learn about this issue more, and there is no difference in terms of gender and classes, and however, the knowledge has not been yet activated or has not been yet put into practice. And the children groups who do not experience any problem do not show any change. However, the ones who are experiencing problems, such kinds of problems, would certainly show a kind of difference or change. And we have also detected that there is a unity of the or consensus between the parents and teachers. So this is all actually within, this is all what I would like to mention or state within this time restriction. I hope it has been informative for you. If you apply them, please continue to support us, and thank you very much once again. Thank you. We will have the questions at the end. In Turkey, unfortunately, we produce programs, but unfortunately, we do not evaluate the efficacy of these programs. So this is really an important study in this respect, and qualitative studies are always missing in such evaluations. Now, I would like to invite Ms. Esra İşven, and she's also the member of the scientific board of Green Crescent, and she will talk about life skills. And life skills are really important in treatment, of course, and now we would like to leave the floor to her. So, hello to everyone. The Green Crescent Life Skills Program and content and context within so drug addiction avoidance or drug addiction prevention is related with life skills development. So most of the programs do not include this life skills program. So for that reason, we have developed this Green Crescent Life Skills Development Program. And this was a teamwork, of course, and this is a project team. You see this names included in this team. So what is the description of life skills? So the behaviors which enable people who experience problems, who would enable people to adapt to life. So who defines these processes in three topics: problem solving, effective communication, and to cope with the emotions. And alcohol, cigarettes, if we look into the other life skills in terms of alcohol and smoking, we see that world literature makes children gain such skills. For example, it's possible that you can develop, for example, coping with traffic or coping with, let's say, to have a hygiene. So to develop a life skill program means what the theme is in your focus, and through this focus to create a different type of form and accordingly enable the person to gain a new type of behavior. This is the program. So this is what we did. So then we screen the world literature. So these are the skills in literature against drug use in order to protect the children. So these are the main skills that have been listed. So there is Botwin program, Botwin program, which is used commonly in the world. It has been translated to different languages. And when we started carrying out this study, the question in our mind was like this: whether we should adopt a program that has been accepted by the world, or should we develop a different kind of program which would be unique to Turkey. However, Botwin's program, we found Botwin's program appropriate for this study. So this program has been affected by postmodern discourse very little. So for that reason, we wanted to hear the voices of the families and the children. So it is not strength-based, but it is not specific to Turkey. So accordingly, we decided to develop the specific or Turkish model, and we carried out the cultural skills, and also we received the parents' opinions, and we first carried out needs analysis, which children we should target, and all these have been targeted separately. And in needs analysis, we carried out literature screening, who are the risk groups, and then accordingly we published an article, and then we carried out focus group meetings, and the ones using substances, not using substances, and especially we received and collected the opinions of the parents, and we also carried out studies with the experts. We tried to learn about the opinions of the experts. So from the youngsters, children, from the experts, and from the parents, all this knowledge from these coming from these groups have been harmonized. And in this program, we have identified 4 steps, and the books were made ready, and we're in the phase of pilot implementation. So at this stage, so currently we are carrying out the studies regarding the validity and adaptability and appropriateness of the tools in measuring, and we will test the long-term and short-term process, and then we will have formed the evidence, and then in order to have the implementation in all schools in Turkey, we will mobilize it. And Green Crescent Life Skills program, well, it was prepared. We did not reinvent the wheel, so we benefited from Lombardia project and the adventure of the Ring project, and all other studies were benefited. And what is, of course, the Green Crescent Life Skill Educational Program? What is it? So with primary prevention context, it is school-based. It's a protective and strengthening program, which is school-based, and our target group is the ones who have tried, who have not tried, or who have tried but not are not using alcohol and substances and smoking. And 15 years of age is critical age, of course. And
takviye burslarını da 8. sınıfta verip 15 yaşına hazırlayalım istedik çocukları. Daha becerilerle donatılmış
so
düşünülebilirdi 8. sınıf ama biliyorsunuz
we could include the 8th grade in Turkey, but
ve 8. sınıfta 15 haftalık bir programın uygulanmasına
application of 15 weeks program would not be possible. So for that reason, it was made to be applied in the 7th grade. And when we look at the targets of the program, to prevent the usage of substance, so decrease the risk factors and increase the preventive factors. And of course, we consulted with the experts, and we also looked at in the excellence standards, and we use the standards of international youth, and also we use international standards. And when we look into these standards quickly, we see that these are met easily by this program, and in line with this program, we have targeted to create this program. So what did we do? We looked into the features or characteristics of the 7th grade, developmental characteristics of the children, and we formed the 15 weeks of program. And the program had 3 arteries. One of them is to fight against, cope with the emotions, self-awareness, and also peer relations were through the 3 mains, the 3 pillars. And of course, for takes 15 weeks, and we also have 8 great complementary activities. For 5 weeks, we carried out a complementary module, complementary trainings, and when we look at the educational program, so we have adopted experimental learning. So the children would be involved in the in this program by experiencing it. So the children would be always a part of an action, part of an environment. So from time to time, they would be their skills for resolving the problem would be increased. Whatever the theme of that week would be tackled, and reflectory learning and cooperative technique. Drama is also used, and discussion is an inevitable part. Hypothetic case, and especially
madde kullanımı teklif edilmiş ya da maddeye temas etmiş bir gencin hikayesi üzerinden hipotetik vakayı çalışarak
so hypothetic case
hipotetik vakayı çözmek için kullanmalarını
is to be used in order to solve the problem for a person who has become addicted, and this scheme is used, and this template is not very interesting, but there is diversification and personalization questions. All these are present in this, and in none of the programs these are the questions that you can never come across with this information, because one of the aim of this is how the children can apply what they have learned in their life, in the activities to real life. So after the activities are over, so with the facilitator, through discussion, the children would be tackling with these questions, and the activities are consist of 4 parts: warming, establishing a cooperation, building trust, and overcoming the impediment. So these are all. So it could be that the children could be unwilling while they carry out these activities. So in order to create an environment for them to participate, we have made our programs and activities accordingly. And we try to integrate all these into an activity. So to the extent it's possible, we try to wrap these, and in overcoming the hindrance or impediment, it includes a kind of challenge. And what happens is that the children work together and they overcome the problem together. And the success is achieved accordingly. And evaluation and measurement. So in Turkey there are many programs produced, but they do not serve as an evidence. So for that reason they cannot be enacted. So we try to find, assess and evaluate it. I don't have the slide on my screen. So let me continue from here. So we asked the questionnaires. In the questionnaires, questions in the questionnaire are related with whether they consider smoking within 1 year, for example, in the upcoming 1 year, and also the children's relation with the families or their colleagues or their peers. And we have formed the pool of questions, and we will be carrying out with validity and reliability studies. And we have also developed the scale.
Maddeyi reddedebiliyor mu? Amacımız ne? Yaşam becerileri programını verip çocuğun reddetme becerisini ne kadar
And
sağlayabiliriz?
to the extent how to which extent we have ensured this program, we have taught the children the ability to say no. And we will also have the evaluation forms, and we hope that in 2019 we will carry out this study and hope that in the next meeting we will be exchanging the results of this study. Thank you. I also thank you. Now we will have the general presentation. She is the faculty member of Marmara University, and she is also the vice president of Green Crescent. Hello once again. Welcome. Just currently I cannot see the presentation on the screen. This is not the one. As you know, Green Crescent carries out studies in different fields, from NGOs and also in the studies that we have. We always evaluate all the responses that we receive. Just recently, in recent years, we were asked to study in the field of families. So families, of course, is a sine qua non issue within such studies. UNICEF carries out certain studies in the field of drug addiction, and it shows that in UNICEF studies, if we do not include parents or families into the issue, the studies would not be successful. And this study was carried out with me and Ms. Esra. And actually, this is a kind of examination. It's important if we to design a family structure who would protect the children from addiction, then we thought that this family should have certain criteria. And accordingly, in order to find out these criteria, we have planned a screening study, and we have recognized that there is an important guide of UNODC, and we translated this into Turkish, and we made this available for all the ones who would be dealing this addiction issue, and of course the family trainings are to provide families an opportunity to enrich the content of the family. So among these programs, there are programs as well to prevent the use of substance. As mentioned before, there is also the study of Mr. Kültegin Ögen. And with these programs, when we look into these programs, we see that there is a disciplinary training of the families. And in terms of the life skills, gaining life skills, there is only the program of the Ministry of Family and Social Affairs, Social Policies. And of course, we asked the question whether we should prepare a new program or should be an adaptation, and what are the things that we have to pay attention. who should be the target group and how we can select this target group and how the application conditions could be identified, what is the content and context of the program, and what would be the scale. And these would be always the questions standing in front of us. And to this end, UNODC in 2007 identified 130 programs in worldwide and convened the appliers, administrators, researchers, and developers of these programs. And then the UNODC has transformed this into a guide. And also it put forward the content of this, it transformed this program into a kind of tool. As you see, the most frequently used programs, 130 programs, were examined, and a kind of meta-analysis was made. And this is really a comprehensive guide, and it's not possible that we can cover all the parts of this guide. But for a program to be formed in Turkey, I think that we can identify or put forward or indicate certain parts. So the critical family factors and the critical family factors which would risk which would put the children at risk of use of substances are covered in this guide. All these factors are put forward as risky families and non-risky families, and there are certain principles, of course, so I cannot cover all these principles, of course, and some principles could be adapted. And in this guide, from this guide, when we look at the results, first of all, the program to be applied in Turkey, it should certainly to be dependent on a program. And in the program, primarily, all the units to work in this field should identify find out what are the reasons of substance use. So for that reason, this is our starting point. And apart from this, the program should be dependent on needs analysis in order to address to comprehensive and large masses. And for that reason, we have to make interviews with the experts, and also we have to identify the risk level. Because there are two things. If we are going to be doing informal risk, then we should take the other way. And also the program should be in line with the ages of the and development levels of the families. If we will be working for the advanced age groups, for example, the families who have adolescents in their lives, then you should establish common groups. And apart from this, you should work groups with adolescents and as well as families separately. And this is really an important issue. And in terms of the intensity of the program and duration of the program, if the family is not at risk, then 4 to 8 sessions would be enough. If we're talking about risky group families, at least there should be 10 sessions. And even since there is an attendance problem, regular attendance problems of these families, and also since there is an evaluation of the homework should be done, these programs could last up to 15 weeks, and these programs should be designed with interactive techniques and activities, and in order to ensure participation of the families, there are certain recommendations in all the programs in whole of the world. There is the continuation of 80%, so there is no 100% participation. So in Turkey, if we do something, if we go up to over to 80%, this would be a miracle. And in pilot implementations, 60% success up to attendance or participation is really a success. And if we want to have the families continue these programs, then we should target the transition periods of the children. This means that, for example, when the children start the primary school or high school, the most critical periods of the children, actually in Turkey, the most critical time is the entrance to the exams, to certain exams. So for that reason, those times could be the target for us to select those families in those groups. Then it would certainly ensure the increase in participation, especially in Eastern cultures. We see that the parents are not very much predisposed for training or education. But if you say that the training education for your children, then you would certainly have more participation by families. So the way to attract the families to a certain education would go through the way that you have to tell that this training is not for them but for the children, and expert and supervision, follow-up or monitoring is really important during the implementation of the program. The program experts should evaluate these applications. So if we decide, even though we select a sufficient in number of families, we cannot expect that all of them attend the program continuously. So for that reason, we have to select more than required, because there is an expectation to have a loss of by 20% in continuation to the program. And if we have to start the program soon after the registry, especially in the ethnical structuring regions. We see that the programs could be attended through the family visits. So in Turkey, if we're carrying out such a program, making such a program, the social workers certainly could be involved in such studies, especially if we are going to be studying with a high-risk group family. This is really important, and family visits are important. If the family visits are made previously to the family, then we see that there would be more participation by this family. So we can easily convince the families. In terms of access to the families, we have to benefit from certain activities, for example, religious meetings, certain activities because of certain reasons, and also to include the elderly. These certainly give positive responses, and the families in the places where they are not much acquainted with such programs, they stay to be hesitant to whether to participate at the program or not. It could be a clergyman or a muhtar, for example, could convince the families to attend these programs, and this means certainly would facilitate access to the fathers. So in Turkey, for example, we see that fathers do not participate at such programs. In order to include fathers, we have to be involved in such implementations, and the program could be presented to the families in different ways. In terms of substance addiction, when we say there's a presentation about substance use, the surveys show us that when we say that there's such and such a presentation, because of fear fear of stigmatization, the families do not participate at the programs. And another important factor has been put forward as the location of the meeting, how the families will be able to attend this event. If we can ensure the families that they access to the place where the meeting would be made, if it is made, this access is made to be free of charge, then we see that there's more attendance. So we have to cooperate as a whole. Then we have to ensure this. We can ensure this, and if it is possible within the program, for the program, there should be a child care service provided. So, and another aspect which ensures continuation of the program is to have some refreshments. This has been found to be an effective factor. Such simple organizations, we may increase the number of participants. And also the implementing agencies of the program having the same culture with the families certainly increases the number of attendance of the families. So we should train the educators in this respect. If family thinks that the family is respected, then there is more attendance. For example, in 130 programs, it was detected that, for example, if the family is called by their own last name or invited in their own name, then there's more attendance. For example, in some of the cultures, the group leaders serving the food is important. So if we can just include these aspects in the program, it is possible that we have more lively programs. And awarding is important, but however, it should be the guide says that if we are to award a certain family, the family should certainly feel themselves meaningful to have received this award, and you paying for the program, it does not yield any meaningful result. And finally, we can say that so as of the 5th or 6th session, the families should plan their own graduation ceremony. This should be documented, and as of the 5th or 6th session, the families should go into discussion what kind of a graduation program they will organize. And I thank you very much for listening. And the ones who would go for making a thesis, preparing a thesis, I think that these are contents to be benefited. Thank you. And I would say, unfortunately, because when we elaborate, we develop a program, and we say, what have we done? But it has been shown that while a program is made, what we have to pay attention is important. So now I would like to introduce a very special person, Fedun Kalaturakis. He is the deputy director of Keteron, and he is really an experienced expert. And along with the addiction experiences, of course, I have the pleasure of knowing him personally as well. He will be touching on cultural diversity in therapeutic communities.
Thank you, Kilt, again. Thank you. It is an honor to be part of this gathering. Let me start with this. I would like also to congratulate you for a great conference. I don't know, I'm just starting to learn, to find out more about the situation here in the addiction field, so I don't know my Turkish colleagues that much, but when I'm thinking about the international people who are here, this is an all-star team, and I don't mean myself, I mean the others, of course. Really, it is great. You know, we Greeks are very proud of our hospitality. But I know we have to learn a thing or two from you. So I would really like to thank the colleagues from Gesilai for making me feel at home. Thank you very much. Thank you for your warm hospitality. Thank you. Now, I will talk about a very specific model, the therapeutic community model. But what I'm about to say, it might apply to other modes of treatment as well. And also I will use examples from Greek reality, but because you know and I know that we have many things in common, our cultures, I mean, you might get some inspiration from what I'm about to say of how to adapt a model to a very specific cultural reality. In our case, the Greek reality, in your case, the Turkish reality. 2016, in April, something very important happened. We had the United Nations General Assembly special session on addiction, on drugs. And for the very first time, all 193 member states agreed that drugs and addiction to drugs is a health issue. For the very first time. Now, it might sound a little hypocritical because we know that more than 60% of these same member states have drugs under the Ministry of Justice, the Ministry of Homeland Security, not under the Ministry of Health, but still. And I think thanks to the effort of the UNODC, this was achieved. To me, this is a step forward for humanity because addiction is more than anything else a health problem, public health problem, but also a personal health problem. In the same year, in December, another text was produced, not of the same importance, of course. The Declaration of Mallorca. In Mallorca, Spain, therapeutic communities from all over the world, the World Federation of Therapeutic Communities, got together and they produced this text. And they describe the framework that TCs, therapeutic communities, belong to as a bio-psycho-social framework. And this is very evident when you see the history of the therapeutic communities. Most people think the therapeutic communities started with the self-help groups in America in the 50s, which is true. And this is the column to your right as you are looking at the screen. This is very true. And this is, let's say, the psycho part, the psychological part, the psychotherapeutic part. Okay, that's how they started. But in the 1800s, in the 19th century, we have the very first communities in England, in Great Britain, communities for juvenile delinquents, for teenagers, for young adults who live out in the streets. I don't know if you're familiar with Charles Dickens. Are you familiar with Charles Dickens? Oliver Twist, David Copperfield, you know, the literature. Thousands of kids roaming London, lots of diseases, crime, you know. So some people who really care about it, and this is the social aspect, they get together and they establish small communities, like Baden-Powell did with the Boy Scouts. Some people didn't like the militaristic outlook, so they developed the little Commonwealth, all the Boys' Republic. They organized these kids in communities, and they were self-governing communities to deal with a very difficult social problem. Anna Freud, Sigmund Freud's daughter, was part of this movement. Later on in England, right after World War II in 1946, we have, and this is the biological part, because it comes from mental hospitals, from the medical world. We have in military hospitals soldiers who come back from the battle traumatized, or soldiers who desert. And the British, being very civilized, they don't execute deserters, they put them into mental institutions. And they're also organized in communities. And for the very first time, in 1946, in an article by Thomas Main, we have the phrase, the term, therapeutic community. So it comes from a bio, from a psycho, and the social realm, and we have therapeutic communities. And the whole idea, and this is a definition that the Australians are giving to therapeutic community, it is the community itself, the group. the team, the community itself does the healing. And this is the genius of the concept. There is, though, a very small problem. All this that I'm describing is not Greek. It is not Turkish. It is not Asian. It is not African. It is not South American. It is very Anglo-Saxon. We're talking about North America and Great Britain, right? So what do? If we want to adapt, if we want to create treatment centers, therapeutic communities, which is, as we will see later, is one of the most effective ways to deal with addiction, if we want people to lead a free of addictions life, okay? How do we adapt this in our own situation? There is a lot of research. Ivodor is one of the research centers. That's the European Federation of Therapeutic Communities, let's say, Institute for Research. But I will use as an example Kethia, which now has 120 units, and it was established, this is very interesting, 35 years ago to the day. Today, we have our 35th birthday. Today, 27th of November. Yes, you can clap. I'm very proud of this. Thank you. 27th of November in 1983, Kethia was established with the first small therapeutic community in Selanik, not very far from here. That's all we do. You can see this. We do prevention, research, education, harm reduction. We do almost everything. And these are our international affiliations. The most important one is that we have a consultative status to the United Nations, to the ECOSOC, Economic and Social Council. Excuse me for a minute. But I would like very briefly to touch in 3 areas how we can make these 3 areas culturally relevant. The first one is family involvement. The second one is vocational training, formal education, and the third one is social stigma. And as I said before, I think all 3 of them might be inspiring to your situation as well. This is from our annual report of 2017, so it is our most recent data. And this is what we do on prevention. So we provided services to about 20,000 people last year. And you can see that many of them are parents, relatives, and also children, so family. But this is even more important. Almost 15,000 people received last year services from my organization, and you can see how many of them are family members. They are almost the largest, not almost, they're the largest group of people. Because unlike the Anglo-Saxon family, that when you're 18, you say bye-bye, see you later, and you leave home, okay? In Greece, it's not like this. For example, my father was working, my mother was a doctor, and she was also working. So I was raised up by my grandmother. In my culture, grandfathers, and mainly grandmothers, are very important. The extended family is very important, and the role they can play. Nephews, cousins, uncles, aunts, we call it soy. It's a Turkish word, I think, soy, right? Extended family, right? Yeah, soy. So you have to do with this, you have to do something with this in treatment. And because many times the family can be part of the problem, now it can be part of the solution. So we developed a program in parallel, and we accept anybody who comes to us for help. We provide services for free to everybody, no matter if their loved one is in the program. So that's why we have more parents, more grandparents, more spouses, more brothers and sisters than we have drug addicts themselves. So we work with the family. And another way we dealt with this is that we developed 13 family associations. So every program in different parts of the country, like the 12 provinces that we saw before, we have 13, there is a family association which is a separate legal entity from our organization. And what do? They volunteer. But also, they put political pressure. Because extended families, have votes. Okay? So politicians listen, and they're a great support to the organization. So you involve the family. That's how you adapt to a culture like the Greek culture or maybe the Turkish culture. Family. That's just an example. Second example, I'm sorry, is the vocational training and the formal education. People have to learn. They have to learn in order to make a living. They have to learn to do something. They have to learn to develop their skills on a professional level, but also they have to be educated. So according to the Greek system, again, this is the adaptation, people have to graduate from high school. So what we do, we have high schools in our therapeutic communities. We have physics teachers, mathematicians, English teachers, the works. They take the same exams like everybody else. No preferential treatment, right? But we provide the teachers. So that's one thing. And also, we train them in things that they are close to the Greek culture, like pottery, like carpentry. Sorry, this is very Italian. The pasta is Italian, but we have farms, so people, you know, we use it to create pasta, biological pasta, and we sell it. So that's part of it. Or we can have a printing factory, a big printing factory, and we print our publications. So that's another way. You provide vocational training, and you also provide formal education. Many people who, while they're in treatment, they're 35 years old, they take the university exams and they enter the university while they're in a therapeutic community. And they graduate eventually, okay? And the third one, and it is the last one, it is a social stigma. It's about social stigma. Okay, this is universal. This is not only in Greece, this is not only in Turkey, I realize this. But let me give you an example, or let me tell you a couple of stories of how we dealt with this. In 2001, where my office is right now in Selanik, we bought a building, and the city didn't want us. They thought it was downtown, it was a very touristic area right in front of the port, and, oh, drug addicts. We're going to have these monsters, we are going to have these drug addicts, we don't want it. So they voted, the whole city council, to get rid of us. They couldn't, because we get the permission only from the Ministry of Health. But it was very, very difficult times, especially for me, because someone overheard in a pub that they paid these people who lived in this area, and they had clubs, and they had enterprises, they had businesses, they paid the Albanian mafia to kill me, okay? So they went to the police, and I had, for 4 months, outside my house, 24 hours around the clock, I had police protection. And I have a large family. I have a wife and 4 children. So now I laugh, but then it was a serious matter. Because of the social stigma, we don't want the drug addicts. It is very wrong, but it does exist. But I will give you another example, and you will see how it is connected with judo. In Alexandroupolis, is a city right after the border. You know, it's very near. It's a town there. There was a girl who came to a therapeutic community, and she started doing judo. And in the year 2003, she went to the nationals, to the national games, while she was in treatment in a therapeutic community, and she got the silver medal in the national games. And because 2004 we had the Olympics, the first 2 from each sport could go to the Olympics, and she went to the Olympics. So we had an ex-drug addict from a small town. Now the problem was that this town didn't want us. We opened a counseling center, and at 2 o'clock at night, they put fire on it. They burned the whole place down. So they would write slogans with my name on the walls, get out of our city, get out of our city. But when they found out that this girl that everybody knew, because the town is small, and if you're a woman and a drug addict, the stigma is double, okay? So everybody could point at you. This girl changed their mentality because they were very proud. They said, oh, we should support them. So they made a decision, and they put money together to send her for practice so that she would go in the Olympics. In 2008, the same woman with the torch, the Olympic torch going to Beijing, you know, ran in the streets of Athens, one hand the torch, and on the other hand she had her little daughter. So miracles had happened. And that's how stigma changes even through something like sports, because that's how this specific culture, my culture, operates. Okay? So these are some ideas just to give you an inspiration, but I'm running out of time. Now the point is, does this work? Okay, let's say you adapt the model, you adapt the therapeutic community model to the Turkish reality, okay, and you develop the Turkish TC, which is really the ideal. Does this work? Okay, in our case, yes, we found out there is the evidence to support that treatment works. So we did, the National School of Health, of Public Health, did this research project, which is one, as you can see, the response rate was 70.1. We interviewed 300 eventually and 88 people, and we tested them. We took their urine and we tested them. You can see in comparison with other very well-known research projects that we have the highest response rate 5 years later. Now, these are people that came to a therapeutic community even only for a day, even only for 1 day. And 5 years later, we find them, we interview them, we take their urine sample, and we see if they're using or not using. And here are the results. First of all, this is time in treatment, and you can see the dropout rate. It's the usual. I mean, the first 4 months, half of them leave treatment, not only therapeutic communities, in any kind of treatment or addictions. But this is the result. When they came to us, 96% were doing heroin, and 5 years later, only 58. Intravenous use, 90%, 53. They were convicted, problems with legal matters, 37%, 5 years later, only 17. 32 were in prison, 14% in prison 5 years later. And unemployed, there were 64%, and 5 years later, only 36. But this slide is the most important one. Please pay attention to the purple column, because the third column is about people who stayed for at least 1 year in treatment. Now, 5 years later, 73.5% were not using any substances, including cannabis. No heroin, no cocaine, no amphetamine, no, nothing. 5 years later. This is great, right? The second column, it has to do about legal issues. Only 14% had problems with the law. And the third one is about unemployment. Only 18% were unemployed. Most people, 8 out of 10, and a bit more than that, were working, had work 5 years later. So yes, treatment works if you manage to culturally adapt a great model like the therapeutic community model. And this is my last statistic. It's about money. It's about last year again. No, it's about 2012, I'm sorry. Again, the Ministry of Health calculates that one drug user out in the street costs the state 136.5 euros. There is a way to calculate. This means policing, ambulatory services, hospitals, etc., okay? So it's 136.5. In prison, a day. In prison, 30 euros. In a therapeutic community, residential or daycare, 29. And in an evening therapeutic community, this means that people work during the day, if they come for therapy only during the evening, 21 euros. Not only works, but it is cost effective. Now, okay, numbers are important, statistics are important, but okay, we're talking about something better than this. We're talking about people. And when you talk about people, you have to talk about the heart. And this is my final word. I always finish with this. This slide. Gilberto must be bored by now. You have seen it many times. But it has to do with the root of the word therapy. This guy, Homer, you know, he wrote about the Trojan War just a few kilometers down the road from here, Troy, right? Homer. And this is the very first time in the Greek language that the word therapon, therapist, appears. And this is a reminder to my colleagues, to all of us who are in the health sector. That's what we are. We are therapists. And therapist in Homer was a servant who was helping the warrior to put his armor on so that he can go and fight the battle. His battle, we don't fight for them, they fight. We equip them. We just make ourselves available. And I'm saying this because the temptation to play God is always there. Many times people come and tell me, oh, Mr. Kaloterakis, thank you, you saved our son. And I'm trying to be nice because they mean well and they're polite, but I really want to laugh. I can hardly save myself from my own demons, never mind someone else. I mean, come on. We're not saviors, we're not gods. They save themselves. We'll just make ourselves available at their service. That's a reminder. Thank you very much.
Biz teşekkür ederiz. Thank you very much. Süremizi oldukça açtık ama bir tane soru.
We have exceeded our time more than enough, but let us just have one question. So let me give the floor to you.
Speakers for their contribution. I wanted only to ask Fedon a thing. I think that there is a mistake, could be a mistake. I'm sure that I can provide the literature. A day in prison cannot cost so small amount of money. A day in prison of 30, I think, euros per day is absolutely less than what is the real cost in prison. This is one of the documentation why treatment is preferable to prison.
But unfortunately, in the Greek case, it's not a mistake.
Or the prison is
Okay.
so poor that...
Yes, but that's a 2012. But they were in a very bad condition. Now the prisons have improved and the cost is higher. But at that time, it was that low, if you believe it or not, which doesn't say a lot about our justice system in Greece. But, but that was the truth. Yeah.
Konuşmacılarımıza arada da
So you may ask your questions in between coffee break, during coffee break. Thank you very much for participation and have a nice day. Can we start right now? So, since this is the last session of the symposium, many of the audience left. Distinguished audience, this is the English-Turkish booth speaking. Can you please kindly raise your hand if you're listening to English interpretation? So we will continue discussing this media and addiction issue. And of course, in this session, with our colleagues, the valuable colleagues, we will talk about the issue, the problem, how media tackles with the issue of addiction. And we will discuss the problematic issues about this. And of course, we had 4 speakers in this panel before, but however, Yeşim Sert Karaaslan from Anadolu Ajansı would be with us, but unfortunately, because she lost her aunt, she could not attend this session, and she apologizes from us. And however, other panelists, Izembral, Mr. Yüksel, and Osman Kaya are with us here. Yeşim Sert Karaaslan could not attend, so for that reason, the time that we allocated for her would be utilized for a Q&A session. And of course, first we need to go to the stage. And I also would like to exchange with you some of the slides just to form the framework of this session. So distinguished and valuable guests, of course, combating against addiction is a combat that needs to be conducted holistically and altogether. So for that reason, we need to provide support to all studies carried out in this field. And we know that media has got an important role in this regard. And media has got two importance. Why is it so? There are two reasons. One of them is in terms of addiction and drugs, because regarding the contents, there is a language, the language used in media causes problems. So for that reason, we try to analyze media in this respect, and we're trying to refer the media. And with certain activities that we carry out, we try to inform the media members in this regard. And the second reason for importance is that media, of course, has got an important role for influencing the society and to create awareness. And in the field of combating against addiction, we can only create awareness with the support of media, and without having the support of the media, it's not it's not possible that we can achieve success. So for that reason, on one side, we get the support of the media, and on the other hand, we should take precautions to avoid or to hinder the media, make some kind of encouragements for usage of drugs and addictive materials or substances. And with the content provided by media, indeed, we have an idea what's going on in the world as well as in our country. Of course, the media has not got the duty only restricted with us with this. Media also teaches us how we have to live, and it is one of the resources that we learn how we have to live. And we learn about what's going on from news, but however, how we have to live are actually taught through the advertisements or the TV series or films and so on and so forth. And accordingly, a kind of culture is formed where there is in the focus a consumption. So it's a kind of media culture. It can be named as a popular culture as well. So for that reason, these products of this popular culture teaches how people would behave in certain conditions, in certain occasions, how they would develop certain attitudes. And many of us, perhaps directly, are not related with drug addiction, but through the media we learn how it is, and we have an idea what it is about, and under what conditions these drugs would be used. We get this idea through media. So the issues that the information knowledge that we acquire actually are through the content reflected by the media. So without not taking much of your time, I would like to touch upon a few things. For example, cinema or the movies that we watch. In 1980s especially, there was the issue of theme. There was a theme concentrated on drugs. For example, White Death was one of the cinema movies. And you see the banners of the cinema or movies in Turkey. So you might have an idea about the themes. So the speaker is just listing the names of the movies. So actually, all the themes suggests the corruption or corrupted youngsters and as well lost generation. So all the themes are based on children, boys or girls. So it also shows how severe, how bad is to be stuck in with such an addiction world. So of course these movies do not only show us this, it also shows us the lives furnished with alcohol and substances. So it also gives us certain ideas. So what happens in the focus, for example, there's an intense life full of enjoyment, happy entertainment, where all kinds of relations are allowed and without any banning, without any prohibition. It is a kind of environment full of freedom. So these stories take place in such an environment. So for that reason, although these movies try to give messages, certain messages concerning the substance addiction, but it also creates a idea in the minds of the people in terms of the living preferences or lifestyles. And I believe that there are also certain TV series that you also watch, and we see there are certain stories that appear. So illegal structures, mafia structurings, trafficking, all kinds of smuggling, and also substance smuggling and trafficking are also some of the themes that we come across with on the TV as well. For example, Çukur is one of the TV cities in Turkey. Its name is Tpit actually when translated into English. So we see that the characters on their bodies have got tattoos on their bodies, and all illegal so they are all illegal characters. So for that reason, it is such a world that these youngsters who watch these films, the youngsters actually are the members of these groups. So and what else do we have? Not in terms of only Turkish series, but we have popular ones as well. So one of the most striking ones probably is Breaking Bad series. It is on Netflix. So the story of the series is like this: a chemistry teacher produces substance with his student and then sells the substance. So this is actually done with a high school student of him, and this is in each episode this story goes on. So the production of a substance, illicit drugs produced by the teacher and a youngster is viewed and watched by all the people. And Walter White is the character, and this fantasy of Walter White is reflected in the real life. So John goes and chemistry teacher, perhaps perhaps affected by this, influenced by this series, and starts producing drugs and starts selling it. So I put the picture of this person to show that these people are mature people. And then, of course, there's Sis, and of course, Walter White does not. Walter White was not affected. However, John Goss was, of course, captured and seized and put into prison. And another issue is popular music. So, and in this regard, there is an uncontrolled way, because through and they are not inspected. They are the contents without broadcast without control. And we know that in the world and in Turkey, important majority of the youngsters, not through the TV channels but through YouTube, they produce content. So this musical piece is Eshel's. So there are expressions, and with the content, just let me show you. Can we just move this? Just let's keep it low in terms of the sound. So after 53 million people watch this video in terms of the words, and also in terms of the images. Within the focus center, there are drugs, and it just reflects the way, the lifestyle, and it tries to encourage this type of lifestyle, and it is a popular star actually, and this musician was arrested because encouraging such an atmosphere in the incident would certainly cause people to be detected or to be arrested. Of course, this is one of the examples. There are many domestic and foreign musical videos which encourages illegal way of life, and also which shows that these drugs are the solution for problems, and it also blesses the drugs. So for that reason, we're of course making an effort to fight against these type of approaches. Whatever we do in media, if there is not enough sensitivity, if the precautions are not done, then if we do not hinder these types of contents, then it's very hard that they can achieve the result. And just to create an awareness, of course, we carry out certain activities within the Green Crescent. And after this, I would like to give the floor to my other colleagues. In the follow-up, in the continuation, I will try to elaborate or give answers to your questions if you would have any. Now, let me have my role as the moderator here. So we have a valuable academician who works in this field from Anadolu University,
özel bir alan açan, halk sağlığı konusunda, sağlık iletişimi konusunda özellikle yıllık sempozyumlar düzenleyen bir değerli arkadaşımız Erkan Yüksel. Medyada uyuşturucu konusunun
He will be
sunulması
talking about media, addiction in media and problems and answers. Hello. First of all, thank you very much for your participation. We are exhausted indeed. We have concentration, tiredness, and physical tiredness as well, and we will try to overcome this situation. First of all, I would like to thank Green Crescent for organizing such a symposium. I have learned a lot, and I met a lot of people, and I have great pleasure having such an organization and attending such an organization. Peri Hanım and Funda Hanım, I would like to extend my thanks for inviting us. And I would like to talk about the addiction problem in media, some problems and recommendations. Since 2010, we try to lead certain important studies, and in meanwhile we have referred our some academician colleagues. So I have assigned one of my colleagues to find out or survey the news, including or news about the drugs. And it was found out to be that it was put forward, it was found out to be that the local papers put forward much better. The local papers deal more with the drugs, and also in local papers it was found out to be that the cannabis is more in the news, and bonsai is more, artificial opioid bonsai is more in the newspapers, local newspapers. So when I just Googled the drugs, I have found that 23 million results. And when I wrote substance addiction, I have found that there are 4,500,000 results. So there is no concept union, but when we call it an drug, then I think that people would understand much better. So, and I Googled the cannabis or marijuana. So I got more results. Cocaine, so it's almost twofolds, more than twofolds, about 10 million on internet. Related to when we look into the news related to drugs, it's about 10 million, and related to cocaine, it's 1.6 million. And we had to, of course, there was need to make a comparison, and you can just consider it as a boiling point of water. When you ask about what is on the agenda, it's the love between two celebrities in Turkey. So when I wrote as Ahmet Kural, I got answers as 60 million. And so the news number is related to Ahmet Kural is 12 million. And when we say when we Google it as Sıla, then now we get about 12 million. So today, this year, we have a book published. So here, it is about the presentation of the drugs in media. So actually, I will elaborate what those numbers mean. So in this study between 2013 and 2015, 357 writings were examined, and when we looked into those newsreels, what kind of news are in the papers, we have seen that 1/4 of the news come from agencies, and 1/4 of them do not, their origin are not known, and 60% of them are signed by the reporters. And then 60% of the news do not have the origins or their resources not known. And when we look at them in terms of their language and explanations, more than half of them arise kind of panic, and 30% of them are encouraged, and 15% of them are giving hope and promising. And we see that what kind of themes are tackled. 81% of them are related with drugs, and 68% of them are related with operation, 30% economic and commercial dimension, 29% with outer appearance, so on and so forth. And 483 images are used in these papers, and in 18th of them there is the image of drugs, and in 14th of them there are celebrities, 14%. And if we set aside this study, I would like to talk about this. So we have a study ongoing. There is a doctorate thesis, and when they are done, we will exchange with you the results. And there was a meeting organized by Ministry of Health, and there was a special part in this meeting for media, and I was one who managed that part in that meeting. So what should be the role and the mandate or responsibility of media? During that meeting it was asked, and it should not encourage, it should not normalize, it should not be recalling, it should not be referring. And among the meeting, these decisions were taken, and the discourses of the media should be free of any kind of ideology. And in content of the media, the right information should be made. And on one side, some screenings, I made a kind of screening, and I also gave as an example. In terms of, in 2014, it was mentioned that there should be a communication group should be established, and so far there is no group established such likewise. And you would say a kind of booklet here. This is a 32 pages booklet. And we can see that and there are no books on this. And as mentioned before, there are many news on the internet. And in terms of the language and use language and descriptions, the use language and description should be paid attention, and the environment where the drugs are used should not be indicated, should not be shown, and there shouldn't be any exaggerations. And I also carried out certain short researches. If you just Google drug and comics, then you would see the variety of video footages. And if you just enter as drugs and pharmaceuticals, you would certainly see certain news and articles. And also there is a statement that was on media just recently. Osman Dabak said that in Turkish cinema, there is a perception that everybody uses it, and it is this reality. So I just recalled such a question. Yes, it could be that in cinema, but we are just asking each other, telling each other, the media should do such and such. So I wonder to which extent the media members know about drugs, what is it? And on the other hand, whether usage of drugs is common in the media members. Do they use them? Have they ever used it? I know that they use some of them. To which extent, I don't know, but I know there are people who use it. And what are the perspectives on use of drugs, and how do they evaluate the news? This was my question. And These are actually the recommendations that I'm considering to give my students. And if we go back to the research in 2014, special terms should not be used. So if you write golden shot in Google, you will come across many news, because there are many news made recently, and I would like to tackle with a different dimension, online vocabulary or glossary. If you go into online glossary, you would see more detailed news and explanations, and so there are statements, for example, do you think that drugs are harmful? Whether if I use it, do you think that I will be harmed, so and so forth. And then if you just go into the recent news, you would see that you should not name the drug. Bonsai is the name, for example, for artificial opioids. So then previously we said that we should not name it. Now we see that it is named everywhere. And in terms of the images used in the newspapers, these are they should not be encouraging, they should not be normalizing, they should not be serving as an example, and they should not be seen by the children, but these are problematic. And we know that the substance addiction would increase creativity. Media or journalism or cinema certainly is a stressful profession. So the role models, we have to underpin them, the celebrities, the artists who provide support to who. While we do the news, we should not show them as victims or otherwise. And these expressions are found to be harmful. And another issue is that the ones who deal with the the drug commerce or trade, they are named as baron or baroness. And in meanwhile, we have to ask the people in media why they call this. And also the ones who provide information to the media should be trained. The media workers should be trained, and they should be they should attend certain meetings where they would be provided certain information, and the media administrators also should be educated. And if they cannot come for a training, we should also visit them. And I think that Green Crescent certainly organizes such meetings. And as regards the content of the news, it was mentioned that there are statements which increases the awareness level. And in terms of, there are many news regarding the combat against drugs related to the police department. The number of news is about 10 million, and it shows that this is not an issue on the agenda. So I have just mentioned that news related to a celebrity is 60 million. So we see that this issue is certainly very low in rank in terms of media coverage. So when we make a Googling or search saying drug addiction, we see less number of news in the search engines. As a result, I would like to say that the subject is not paid attention very much in the mainstream media, and also the content of the broadcasts and as well as problematic. So the content of the broadcast is problematic, and there is a need to carry out certain studies in order to inform the related parties in media. Thank you for listening. Thank you very much, Mr. Erkan Yüksel. He has contributed to this field a lot, and as well. He has provided a support to this field. Mr. Erkan shared with us certain tables and graphics, and it shows that we're certainly experiencing problems on internet media as well as media in papers. So it's quite a problematic area. Of course, the internet media has got a certain characteristic. Internet media, compared to the common media, there are no control mechanisms and there are no filters. They are not filtered and they are not controlled. So for that reason, many news are broadcasted without any control, without any inspection. So for that reason, the youngsters and children can easily go into the internet and they are informed through internet media, and which causes a severe problem, of course. And the second speaker of our session is Ms. Islam, and Ms. Islam is also working actively in Green Crescent studies. We have already participated in certain meetings, media training meetings, and she will be talking about the presentation of the drug addiction in the main news on TV. So distinguished participants, since 2 days we have been conducting a very intense program since 2 days. So I thank you very much still being here. So within these 2 days intense programs, there have been many things that we have learned from our national international speakers. And as mentioned by Mr. Peyami a while ago, media is within our social life, and especially after 1990s, with the start of the private TV channels, diffused, the special TV channels diffused into our lives, and it showed, or it tried, these channels certainly express how we should administer things, how we should shape our lives, and they became more strict and concrete in our lives. And when we talk about, of course, news media, we have the images involved, and also the strict scripts or the text of the news are important. So we know that what we see, we believe in more what we see. So for that reason, television is more effective and it shapes us more. And in this respect, new ideas, new opinions are formed with such images. So of course, bad news is the good news in all over the world. So for that reason, of course, what we criticize is that we always talk about classical news criteria to have a news taking place recently, or so what criteria, news criteria, what does it mean? Of course, it means that many events, incidents taking place around our scales come onto the TV or radio. This is what we mean by this. In sensational news, media have got many sins, of course, because we see that on every TV channel, when it is the issue of TV news, we see that these news are established as sensation. However, media is now as industry, it's a profit-seeking industry. However, the social responsibility should be at the highest level. So for that reason, the best way actually to explain the right thing is to show the worst thing, or to show the right thing by showing the wrong thing. So just let me show you first the video footages. So especially the selected news, there is a principle of for the benefit of public, or from the please watch it from the perspective of the right of the public to know of it. Distinguished audience, as these video footages were not provided the translations in advance to the meeting, it's not possible that we can translate them. Sorry for the inconvenience.
Bu görüntüler Mecidiyeköy metrosunda kaydedildi. Uyuşturucu kullanan gençlerden biri metro merdivenlerinde sızdı. Ağzı köpüren arkadaşıysa bağırarak kendisini tekmeledi. Metroya gelenler neye uğradığını şaşırdı. Acı dolu manzara yürek burktu. Olaydan geriye bu görüntüler kaldı.
Abi uzaktan git, sana saldıralım.
Şimdi haberde görüntü olarak.
So when we see the image here, there is very much agitation to draw attention. But one of the most important things to be criticized here is that the face of this person
Tanınmamasına ilişkin bir muzlanma üzerinden verilmiş.
The face of the person has not been made ambiguous. It is not blurred. Secondly, we say that there should be the principle of for the benefit of public. So in these images, is there any benefit for the public? Do you think that seeing the face of the person or hearing the screams of that person, is there any public benefit in this, hearing the screams of that person and seeing the face of that person? And this is the second news.
Şimdi bir görüntü getirecek ekranlarınıza. Sokakta yerde uyuyan bir çocukla ona sarılmış yerinde yatan bir köpeğin görüntüsü. Beşiktaş'ta çekilen kare sosyal medyada çok konuşuldu. Sanatçı Halk Levent'in kurduğu dernek Suriyeli çocuğa ulaştı. Levent duygularını CNN Türk'te paylaştı.
Yerde bir örtü, üstünde yatan bir çocuk, bir de adeta ona sarılmış uyuyan simsiyah köpek. Genelde duygusallık yaratsa da aslında çaresizliği çok iyi anlatan bu görüntü İstanbul'un göbeğinde, Beşiktaş'ta çekildi. Sanatçı Halk Levent'in derneği ulaştı o çocuğa. Derneğin adı AHBAP, yani Anadolu Halk ve Barış Platformu. Dernek Türkiye'nin farklı yerlerinde örgütlendi. Şimdi sosyal sorumluluk projeleri gerçekleştiriyor. Amaçları yoksulluğa dikkat çekmek. Kısa süre önce de kursalar birçok şey yaptılar. Yoksul ailelerin sorunlarını dinleyip yetkililerle onlar arasında köprü oldular. En son ulaştıkları bu çocuksa sosyal medyada çok konuşuldu. Sanatçı Halk Levent, Beşiktaş'ta köpeğe sarılarak uyuyan çocuk için AFAD'ın harekete geçtiğini söyledi.
Suriye'den gelmiş, ailesi terk etmiş. Biz ulaştık, elimizden geleni yapmaya çalıştık. Erzak olsun, üst baş olsun vesaire. Kadıköy'de bir yolda yerleştiriliyor ve öğrendik ki tekrar kaçmış. Bu çocuğumuz sokakta yaşaya maalesef uyuşturucu kullanmaya başlamış.
So, as we see the image, this child or this boy is a Syrian boy, and it is said that this boy is imaged or is shown here because that he was involved in a kind of drug issue, and probably he's under 18 years old. And once again, the face of the person is shown clearly here.
Olduğu yerde sızıp kaldı. Uyuşturucu madde alan genci polisler ayırtmaya çalıştı. Yürek burkan görüntüler Aydın'dan. Uyuşturucu madde aldığı öne sürülen bir kişi ambulans hastaneye kaldırılıyordu. Saldırgan dışınca sağlık görevlileri polislerden yardım istedi. Polisler gence su döktü, ayırtmaya çalıştı. Polisin de yardımıyla hastaneye kaldırılan genç tedaviyi kabul etmedi. Hastaneden çıktı. Kendisine gelen genç adam bölgeye gelen yakınlarıyla birlikte evine gönderildi.
And there are some other images. Apart from being sensational, they do not have any feature or quality of being a news. And we see that there is no expert idea or view regarding these or in these news. And here in this image, as you see, there is the exhibition of the full body of the person, and the statements that are used are really important for us. We will soon see the descriptions. And here we see a criminal who is who is prone to harm the society all at once. And another point that we have to draw your pay attention is that, like this, for example, in this news, we see that two people attacked the people in the street, and then 2 days later the news is corrected and saying that actually these two people were fighting with each other or arguing with each other. And just frequently the families are within the images of the news. Of course, drug use does not only impact the person himself, but also impacts or affects the surrounding, the family or the society. However, such images should not be shown. This father, for example, being in a helpless position, and actually this shows how the news are given. So, as just mentioned before by Mr. Erkan, so we have to pay attention to this very important, the way of how the drugs are administered, what kind of effects it might have. For example, the golden shot. This is something which creates or which arises curiosity. So, in Turkish cinema, we have always seen on movies this. Here, the person has the face here explicit, for example, and there is also the news regarding the explosion of the ecstasy. So, as it is in heroin, it was not determined that it does not create any addiction, but increases the beats of the heart, and even the women also use ecstasy related to increasing the beat of the or pulse of the people. And on the other hand, we say that the social figures are very important, that they serve as a model for youngsters. For example, Tarkan, one of the well-known celebrities of Turkey. About him, there was a news made, and it was mentioned that he does not use drugs. However, his driver was using, and then afterwards he became a figure, a magazine afterwards, just showing how he has his breakfast, how he has dinner, so on and so forth. So when we talk about or think about the celebrities, if there is a person who commits crime, then if he is detained, then he is treated as a general, for example, and these are tackled on the news and the media. And I would like to talk about our study. Our study was conducted within 3 months through PR database, and we tried to find out the results about the TV news and the descriptions used for the drug addicted people, and the issues related to drug using, which points are more intensified, treatment issues, and actually this is one of the most important issues that we pay attention. The person who is drinking the drugs or using drugs can be interpreted as a criminal. So according to through PRnet database, such and such, these words on the screen are screened. And since there are many repetitions of these news in different times of the day, then only one of them was taken into consideration: addicted, substance addicted, drugs, bonsai, so on and so forth. When we look at the TV channels, we see that there's not much difference in terms of the channels. We see that Habertürk, CNN Türk, and TGRT, we see that there are more news contents concentrating on the list of words that we have just mentioned. So in terms of the duration, we see that there is in broadcasting 61 to 120 seconds, and this is really a long period. And just underneath, if we consider the underneath, about 61 to 180 seconds, there is a kind of story type of addicted story on addicted people. And when we look at the time spared allocated, we see that in detail the issues here. In terms of the resource is shown to be the channel itself, as well as the reporters and as the agency. Agencies are given as the agency is given as a resource, and when we look at the distribution in terms of the news topics, we see that the person who is under the effect of the substance, the person who is in a condition of committing or disposition of committing crime. For example, streets or old buildings are also given as images. And as regards the gender, we see that there is more intensification in the use of substances by males, and we see that there are also themes, and of course the age is important. In the yesterday's sessions, the age for use of drugs is quite less. And generally, the youngsters in public atmosphere, public environment, we see that people are put in the focus of unconscious activities. So supply information is important, and what is important here, what do we expect from media? And while these news are broadcasted, primarily the coping methods also should be given. Secondly, there should be the view of the experts as well. And here, as we see here, the person should not be shown as a zombie or as a person entrapped, or a person should not be shown as an helpless person. So in scripts, these points should be paid attention. Thank you very much for your patience. We also thank you, Ms. Islam. So Ms. Islam drew attention to the problematic fields in news. And of course, these keywords are really important. As you know, one of the behavioral cliches is that if we do not know the word, we just Google it or go to the search engines. So every kind of word used in news get become more important. For example, a youngster or child, if he hears for the first time the word ecstasy, then he comes across an endless content. So for that reason, Mr. Erkan already gave information about it. Then the youngsters or children may get such information about it, and these information may be encouraging. So in the trainings that we provide to the journalists, we say that they should not use the names of these substances. However, the journalists still use the names of these substances, and they really have an appetite in using this. And another appetite is about giving the names of the people or the celebrities, for example, showing these celebrities in the news. And because the celebrities have got a lot of fans. And Mr. Erkan gave us the figures a while ago, Ahmet Kural and Sıla problem. When he talked about it, he showed us that 60 million was. There are 60 million news about this couple. So the interest is very intense, actually, in celebrities. So the professionals who want to benefit from such an interest, when such a news is captured or seized, what do? They cover this in media in a comprehensive way. And in a world where even Tarkan uses drugs, the substance usage may be normalized in mindsets. So for that reason, related to these celebrities, we should pay attention, and it is really a problematic field. And Ms. Islam and Mr. Erkan are from Anadolu University, and now Osman Kaya is with us from Eskişehir Technical University, who worked a long time in Anadolu University and left Anadolu University recently. And she will talk about media guides on addiction, analysis of media guides on addiction. Hello. I am a faculty member in Eskişehir Technical University. I'm working there. And in terms of health news ethic, I have a doctorate thesis. And today I will be talking about analysis of world guides on addiction, on drugs. We have been talking about what is addiction and what are the studies combating against addiction. I will provide brief information about this. And addiction, actually, we have learned very well since 2 days. It is a substance the person cannot leave, even having tried twice or more than twice. And despite that, the person wants to drop it or stop it, cannot do it. And also, there are certain activities or certain deprivations are caused because of not using this substance. So the one who starts using a substance, starts using that substance, saying that, okay, there's no problem, I can stop it, but cannot stop, and then it comes a kind of vicious circle. So for that reason, addiction, substance addiction does not only affect the person who uses it, as well affects the family and surrounding of that person. It's actually a public health problem, and since this addiction is a public health, what is done, what is being done? And when we look at in our country, we see that Ministry of Health, Police Department, Green Crescent, Ministry of Education have got certain meetings, organizations and conferences and so on and so forth. There are also academic studies and articles, papers, and in a senior framework, there are policies, action plans, and prevention strategies as well. And one of them is actually in 2014, in a workshop on addiction, substance addiction. The results have been already articulated. In 2000, I would like to touch upon the 2014 Declaration on Addiction, Substance Addiction. So in the declaration it says that required support should be provided to all related parties who need it for fighting against or combating against addiction. And when we look into the action plan 2016-2018 combating against addiction, we should raise awareness in the community, and we should ensure the related parties to be involved in the process. And also the media dimension has been emphasized here. But however, in this media dimension, it talks about the awarding mechanism to be developed and trainings to be provided. And Ministry of Health was identified as the institution, as the authority to be cooperated with. However, there is a point that has been skipped here, is that the media and news, you use newspapers and media as to convey information. However, as mentioned before, to which extent the journalists know it? Because the ones who will cooperate, who you will cooperate or partner, are the journalists. However, the journalists are only interested in promotion issues. So for that reason, in the studies carried out to find out the responsibilities of the journalists in terms of combating against addiction, the description of world guides were made, and 12 media guides were examined, and I examined themselves. And here we have the guides guides prepared by certain institutions in America, in Great Britain, Australia, and Canada. Why is it so? Because these countries are the countries where where surveys about journalists are carried out intensely, and these guys were analyzed through document analysis. And here it was the justification for preparation of the guide. 4 main themes were identified, and under these themes the guides were examined. And when we look at the justification for broadcasting or publishing the media guides, is that to support the journalists and to make the journalists pay attention to certain issues, aspects or factors. So in the guides it says that we want to support the journalists in production of the news and to put down the prejudices. And in the guides there are also information about the drugs. And we tell the journalists that when you make a news related to drugs, don't use this image, don't use this statement. But to which extent the journalists know the drugs? Perhaps they know what they perhaps use it, perhaps they are addicted. But under normal conditions, if somebody comes to you and asks the news about the addiction, you know the field, but the journals may not be cannot dominate the whole field. So for that reason, there is specialization. And here, the ones who work in the access of health news, the ones who are stuck with certain points, there should be a resource to be appealed, so that these negativities can be eliminated. So related to drugs, what are the types, what are the images, what are their effects, what is addiction, what kind of a treatment process is required. So all these are all covered in these guides, in the guides. And of course, the supporting organizations, addresses and contact information are also given. For example, I make the news. Let's say that I'm stuck. I have reservation that to do something wrong. Then I can just secure an appointment and I can give this information, and ethic rules are not obeyed. For example, the faces of the people in images are not blurred. So media ethical rules and principles are to be referred in these guides. And what I would like to underline here is that the guides published in England, the ethical principles are more referred, and terminology related to drugs are also taken into consideration, are given in the guides, like, for example, what is addiction, what is abstinence, so on and so forth. And as regards the journalists, what has been recommended? The answer to these questions is that within the framework of health news fundamental principles, not harm to harm, and integrity, and general result was achieved. And here, there are a few points that are put forward, and I would like to share with you these issues. In media drugs guides, it says that most papers make things worse. It seems people who have a problem with drugs are perpetually hated. Newspapers, they go to the headlines and those are alienating people who just need help. People see a group who are not vulnerable, just come, and the emphasis is not given. And another example is that I have despaired over the years about the hysterical and ill-informed way in which the media, most especially the largest selling popular newspapers, report on the subject of drugs. Journalists are too ready to accept myths and, by passing them on, contribute to further myth-making by their readers, and this harms the society. So for that reason, the journalists should also be aware of this. And for this, in guides, we see that one of the texts is that while the journalists can make interviews, there are certain checklists to be checklists, for example, best practice checklists for reporting on addiction and opioids. What kind of communication should be established, which questions should be presented, should be addressed, and cases are also given as examples. And also the other issue is the terms used. For example, we should not avoid junkie, for example, or crackhead. We should use dependent drug user. We should avoid authorization or marginalization. And there are certain parts showing this, and as a result, in the guides I have examined, taking into consideration professional journalism behaviors, and also paying attention to the personal rights of people, when we look at the issue specifically in terms of the drugs, we should use the language in the right way. We should avoid myths and legends. We should use the right terminology, and we should avoid generalization, and these are emphasized. And in abroad, this is such a guide present in abroad. So if I pay attention all these principles, I cannot find any materials, perhaps a few of them. So if we just carry out such if I scrutinize, and if none of the journalists in Turkey have such an option or chance to say so, to do so. So while we carry out studies, make strategies, we should not forget that one of our stakeholders is the journalist. Otherwise, all the studies about awareness raising or giving the message to the target point would not help, would not work. And I recommend to the participants, I don't know whether they would support me, but related to drug addiction, related to the journalists, there's a need that a formal text should be prepared. I think such a study or work can be carried out. These are the guides that I examined. Thank you very much for your listening. So thank you very much to Asuman Kaya. In the result part, one of the important stakeholders in this work is, of course, the journalists. And as the Green Crescent, we're conducting many studies, but of course such a guide should be prepared in Turkey, and it should be presented for service, of course. And at least this will certainly facilitate the training works. And I think we have got some time for questions and answers, and I think we can get these questions. So related to this guide, there is an ongoing study as Anadolu University. We're preparing such a guide. Thank you. So it seems that Anadolu University does a lot of, hopefully in cooperation with Green Crescent, we hope that these studies will be enhanced and developed more. Let us just give you the microphone first to you, and then afterwards, thank you very much. In recent weeks, I participated at a meeting related or on media's relation with cinema, and the result was that the cinema reflects what is in the society. So alcohol usage or smoking shown in the cinema movies could not be as effective as we would expect. This was the society's thought, but it's not actually like this. For example, the person who would get out of this hole, for example, in Taksim, might see a place where alcohol is consumed. So to which extent we should blame cinema or movies for that? This was the question. I wonder your ideas about this or about this concept. So actually the movies, all the contents, actually, of course, they are plans or they are stories. So on widescreen, when people watch this on widescreen, then they know that this is out of the scope of reality and they watch like this. So, however, in present, I don't think that indeed in the news, we see that this is not the case. Of course, these have to be reflected or shown on the news, but the people who watch the news, they watch these news knowing and believing that these have taken place and these are real things. Of course, the movies should be criticized, but I think when it is the issue of news, we should make a discrimination or differentiation between reality and the plot. Of course, related to movies, things are not so much naive. So, the reason, one of the main reasons why people started so much smoking is actually because of Hollywood films. Because through the movies that were sponsored by cigarette companies, accordingly, there was more consumption of cigarettes or smoking. So the cinema makers, movie makers cannot save themselves saying that these are already in real life. So there's an international manipulation that we cannot neglect. And secondly, we're not only focusing on a reflection issue. While reflecting, there is also the issue of encouragement. There is also an issue of referral. So in our real life, we are just making contact with a world we will never be able to contact in real time through movies. So our relation with the drug users actually can be ensured through movie content or other media content. So here, the approach here is really important. These should not be encouraging. They should not be normalizing, and they should not cause misunderstanding, and they should not create any stereotypes and cliches. And here, currently, all of us have got certain prejudices, and these are not through the real life. These are actually the ones which are reflected through the images in media. So for that reason, one part is related with entertainment, one part is dancing, or it is just a kind of description of a life which would attract many people. So this would certainly affect people who are not adults. So movie makers certainly have got certain responsibilities as well. And I would like to give the floor to the lady. So I would like to with all respect. So our addicted children, how we can save them, how we can protect them. So I wish a child could say, I am salvaged, I am cured, such and such. For example, I've got two sons. They are both addicted. They are graduates of universities. So internet is something else, of course. Internet dimension is something else. So I have to say that, of course, so we have put on the agenda similar problems on the agenda. Why we have children entrapped, victims entrapped, and why do we have such stories of those people? Why we do not have the stories who are salvaged, who are relieved of these problems? Of course, here, if we ask this question, we come across with or confront with some other problems, some problems some problems of the media in other fields. So actually these contents are kind of Satan in content, having Satan content. So media actors or media members actually do this because there is a demand, because that the people are enjoying watching it. However, we say that we should put on this agenda these success stories as well. If there is a kind of if this is a kind of place where people are entrapped, there are certainly, if there's a kind of bog or marsh or swamp, then I believe that there are also success stories as well. There are just theoretically, I'm working in the field of theory, and I'm interested in who identify, who determine the agenda ideas. I actually this issue is not administered. When I ask when it can be administered, there is a concept of media advocacy. So what happens is that one of the newspapers comes up and says that this is an important issue for me. For example, a journalist who lost his child, for example, writing about the same issue is a media advocacy. So for that reason, I just asked whether the journalists also use drugs. So second issue is subject, following the subject. What happens is that, for example, certain organizations provide certain contents to certain newsmakers, and this conference has been lasting since 2 days. Do you think that this will be covered comprehensively in media? I don't think so, because this does not within the interest of media. The media is a kind of mirror. It is like convex or convex. Concave or convex. So media does not like figures, because I don't like it and you don't like it. When I say that so many people died of drug, it is just the attraction to the news. So in order for something to be on the agenda of the media, there are some certain aspects required. In a news, such a meeting would not be an issue, would not be news on the TV, on media. So first of all, we have to identify certain targets and turn them into concrete steps, and we have to convey them to the media. So actually, I don't say that we have to say do this, don't do this to the media. This is a name, perhaps, whatever you call it. It could be a management of communication, but the drug issue should be handled or put on the agenda of the media or administered on the agenda by somebody. I don't know if that person, either it could be Green Crescent or Ministry of Health or such and such, but the best, we're always following the answer of the question of what can be done best to have a solution for this. But the media content should be managed. Otherwise, all these things would continue as they are. So time is progressing. Let's have one more question. So last week, I visited Maltepe prison. There is the movie Avlu. It is called Avlu, and I said, "Aren't you offended by this? Are these things present?" They said, "No, it's an exaggeration." They said. So Avlu, Courtyard. It's the name of the TV series Courtyard, and when I entered as Avlu, I saw that there is a like by 98% by the audience. So as the community, we can act against and respond to us. I think before the management of the prisoners, the radio and television senior management board should react to this. Thank you for the contribution. Thank you very much. It has been a really rich presentation. Ms. Islam, I would like to ask my question, and Ms. Asuman, I would like to address my question. So, the dimension, the responses were given in many dimensions, and actually the fundamental problem is that what is not to be needed is written, what is need to be written is not written. So if this is the case, there is no sanction, and we are just facing such a press. So actually our fundamental problem here is how we should do the supervision or monitor, auditing or inspection. How should we respond or how should we react to it? Since 1910s, there was a self-inspection of the media. It's an inspection of the press itself, and also it is the inspection of the press by the society. How this can be organized, for example, the senior management of radio and television in this senior council of radio and television, there are no representatives of muhtars, or there are no representatives of the neighborhoods or districts, and press and announcement institution is like there is no representation of the society. It's all full of bureaucracy. So what is this relation? This relation is because press survives with official advertisements. So whatever they write, whatever they don't write, they're inspected accordingly. So there is the real inspection would be by the public, by the people. Then we have to work on this. Of course, you know that there's press council, and there are two representatives from the public. I should not give the names, but they are the ex-governors of Istanbul. I don't know who would they represent. So out of this structure, we don't have such an inspecting structure, and we cannot have something that the press renews itself with its real dimensions. They do not represent or they do not realize what is required by the public. So I wonder what do you think about the things that I have mentioned. So Ms. Asuman says that let us prepare a script. Okay, let us say that we have prepared this. It's not in line what was being expected. Then what shall we do? So we have already exceeded our time already. So related to this issue, so thank you very much for the issue that you drew your attention. So this is actually an issue that we are dealing with in our daily life. Unfortunately, professional groups, for example, press council does not go any further beyond having condemnation sentencing. And apart from this, the senior management, council of radio and television only makes the organizations pay fines. And just a while ago, as Mr. Erkan mentioned, perhaps we have to focus on this spirit, because this dimension in Turkey is now have exceeded what is being expected. So every day we're just hearing about this drug addiction, for example, and I think that we have to fight against this issue as a whole, as a community whole, and I believe that this is not something that can be overcome by the press itself. And Mr. Erkan, what would you like to say? Yes, this might be different to you. I think that we have to look on the other side of the issue. There is rewarding and punishment when we raise the children. We do not take into consideration this rewarding part in media. Maybe we should also consider this rewarding part rather than punishing. What would be how would it be if we would reward these people doing their jobs in the right way? So distinguished guests and participants, I would end my speech with few words, and then Ms. Sultan will close down the symposium. I would like to draw your attention. Yes, it is really a complex problem. It is not a problem that can be solved immediately. Of course, all our work is education as NGOs. On one side, we will be training the journalists. On the other, the citizens will train or educate the youngsters, the children. Accordingly, we will certainly form a kind of awareness. We should not be hopeless. And of course, this is a work which is cumbersome, and we are volunteers for this, and we are researchers in this field. So for that reason, in time, through education, through trainings and surveys, we will increase the awareness, and accordingly we will certainly contribute to the solution of these problems. Of course, this will certainly take time. It will be extended in time. Turkey, in many fields, have taken very important steps forward, and we should not forget this. For example, in terms of usage of tobacco, where we stand right now is completely different where we stand 5 years ago. It was difficult, but we could succeed. So these difficulties, I'm sure that will be solved hand in hand through these voluntary actions supporting these studies and works, and we will certainly overcome this problem. And now I would like to leave the floor to our Director General, Sultan Hanım. Thank you. First of all, thank you very much for participating and staying late at this time. First of all, with your permission, I would like to make a closing speech in English.
Dear speakers and participants, first of all, I would like to thank you for joining us and staying till the end of the symposium. Also, our president couldn't make it here today, unfortunately, and I want to thank you on behalf of him too. And the aspects of drug use and control activities were discussed in 13 sessions over 2 days. Professionals and policymakers had the opportunity of learning from the experts. Our special thanks go to Gilberto Gera for supporting us with the selection of 31 international experts. And I would also like to thank two teams who worked hard to make this event a success. Also, on behalf of the team, as she is the most experienced one, I want to thank Dr. Perihan Torun too. And let's give them a big applause, this great team. And we hope to meet you again in 2019 to discuss another topic of addiction. Have a safe journey back home if you are leaving, and hope to see you again here and to discuss new topics. Thank you.
insanlar bir can kurtarmaya hazır mıyız? Gönlünde güneş batmış tüm canlara güneşi göstermeye var mıyız? Yeşilay elimiz kolumuz başımız umut yolumuz açık olsun daim. Bu yüzden daha da güçlü olmamız gerek tam zamanı. Eğer hazırsan 1 liran var mı? 1 liran var mı? 1 liran var mı? 1 liran var mı? 1 liran var mı? 1 liran var mı? Umut olmak için 1 liran var mı? 1 liran var mı? 1 liran var mı? 1 liran var mı? 1 liran var mı? 1 liran var mı? 1 liran var. Güzel yarınlar için 1 liran var mı? Bağımlılık bir suç değil hastalık. Tedavisi ise yardımlaşmadır. Yeşilay bunun için hep ayaktadır. Yardımlarınız ise yoldaş. Yeşilay görür, korur, eğitir, kararlı yürür. Gözetir, yok eder umutsuzluğu ve